Hey guys, how's it going? Now I have a very long-winded intro that I have to do here. I'm going to ask that you don't skip it. I apologize if this video isn't as polished as my previous videos are and how they will be. I just have a lot to talk about in the start of this video. First and foremost, this video is about the distribution between fast laps and laps led in the 2024 Cup Series season. I will make a video for that for the Xfinity and the Truck Series. In addition to that, I will have a video coming out pretty much every other day between now and the start of February, so you can get ready for a lot of content being out there. Secondly, on the dial, I want to talk about where the NASCAR DFS industry is, kind of where that niche falls in line. If you haven't noticed, there's not a lot of NASCAR DFS content out there. I'm recording this January 11th, nothing on YouTube. Very, very little discussions, mainly on the NASCAR changes and rumors on Twitter, really nothing out there, okay? And then I want to talk about, different products and things of that nature, just kind of right off the bat. So first and foremost, I'm going to be pushing, TrueDFS quite a lot this year. And mainly for the fact that we are partnered with SaberSim, as we have been for years, but I think SaberSim is the best product out there right now, publicly available. I think it's better than other optimizers. I think it's better than most sim tools out there. I think the only ones that rival it are privately owned, and we'll talk about an upcoming product in a second. But for the most part, if you're playing DFS day in and day out for NBA, MLB, hockey, if you need contest sims, if you're interested in SaberSim, if you're interested in moving up, I would advise you get it through us, because then you also get all our content. The core is basically all the projections that I make, that Sheets makes, that Goldie makes, access to the Discord, everything that you get. I would just advise get it through us. Like, if you're interested in SaberSim, get it through us. You get a pretty substantial discount if you get stuff through us for yearly. I mean, that's not bad at all. For the people who spend that amount of money on DFS a year, I would advise you get it through us. Secondly, as we move on into the DFS industry, if you noticed, the only video I put out in December was talking about how to pull data, and it didn't get many views. I mean, it's still going to be up. I'm not going to take it down or anything. But where we're seeing the DFS industry and the NASCAR DFS industry kind of sit right now is a bit of like a limbo position, because really the one thing that each individual product offers, okay, because if you're looking at RPS, yes, they're partnered with SaberSim, but you have Rubio's projections. You look at other sites, and really what they offer are the projections for the drivers and ownership. That's really the only thing NASCAR DFS is. Realistically speaking, that's what it is. Now, whether you're getting those projections through your own sims, I'm talking about like content creators or like the people making the projection sources, okay? Whether you're aggregating stuff, whether you're making your own sims and running things, that's really what NASCAR DFS is, okay? The reason why I made this video is almost a play at kind of chipping away on products that have somebody pulling free data and then offering that to their subscribers. I just kind of showed you how to get it on your own, so you don't have to pay for anything, okay? Because where we're falling in line at is, I think there's going to be maybe 3 to 4 good products, projection sources out there this year. The main one entering the fray is Joe Schroeder's Speed Geeks. Phenomenal DFS player, phenomenal NASCAR DFS player. We know how he plays. He's been around for years. He was a guy that I looked at when I first started playing. I'd pull lineups and see specifically how he was playing and approaching races. To this day, he's a phenomenal player. So when we look at that entering, that is Schroeder's product rather, will be his sims, his outcomes on those sims being given to people. Okay, he was with Win the Race last year. I don't exactly know the extent of that because I was blocked in every category, and of course I'm not going to buy another NASCAR DFS product because I have my own stuff. But Joe knows what he's talking about. Okay, you have Rubio at Run Pure, who also knows what he's talking about. Decent projections, and when I say decent, that's not like that's not an insult. Like decent, like good, like one of the good providers out there. So you have Joe Schroeder on the scene now. You have RPS. I would argue myself, because not only have I been doing this a long time in terms of NASCAR DFS content, I might be the longest running content creator at the moment. I am able to say that I've won at least one contest solo the last 3 years, and I have the largest amount of live views, outside of Pinnell, because Pinnell also goes live. But in terms of people who are able to maintain audience, I mean, Pinnell, I believe, stops his live streams when NFL comes out. I'm the only person who keeps live streams going, publicly without behind a paywall that I'm aware of through these last years. And so at this point, I would argue that people are using my stuff, at least viewing the content in some form or fashion. But really, that's what we're selling. We are selling projections on what we think players are going to do and what we think ownership might be, and possibly how to build. Anything else, any other data out there is publicly available from NASCAR, whether it's from their API, whether it's from their website, whether it's from their teams. You don't have to pay for anything else out there. That's where the NASCAR DFS industry is. Okay? Case right in front. Some of the stuff I'm going to be using is from Abnormally Distributed, his free sheet that he has out there. Now, this was stuff that he gathered throughout the year, and this is the, I've just taken it and uploaded on my end. And then we also have, I do my own rating, but for this example, we're going to be looking at, driver rating throughout this year. Now, granted, everybody has their issues with driver rating in some form or fashion. If you're listening to this video at this point, you already know the issues that people run into by using driver rating, but it is at least for this video's purposes, we can use that as like a baseline of what to look at. But going back, like, AD provides all this. Plenty of content creators out there provide, whether it's the previous DraftKings and FanDuel scoring for each slate, whether it's practice data, whether it's, if you want to use driver rating, if you want to make your own that you think, or your own rating or sorting system, similar like what I use in the live shows that I think is more accurate than driver rating. Like, we're all using the same data out there. You don't have to pay for anything else, right? That's where my view is. That's where my stance is, okay? If anybody else is selling you on anything else, it better be a Sims product that is showing like actual, like, good simulations. That could have been worded better. But like, if you're not able to do that, if you're not able to prove it, I don't know what we're paying for. I don't know what you're paying for as a consumer, right? So, bit of a interesting situation in this industry of what is a NASCAR DFS product? How good are some products? How bad are some products? I put my stuff up there, but anyway, I wanted to get all that out of the way just because I noticed, like, man, dude, there's no content out there at all. Like, absolutely no content. Okay. And if you're paying, $30, $40, $50, $60 a month for, a NASCAR package, hey, if you're paying down, is it worth that cheap? Hey, if you're paying up, is it worth that? I can think about 4 people that I actually pay a good amount for. So anyway, I'm going to get all that out of the way first. Just because, we haven't talked in a long time. What I want to do here is go over where people either increased, decreased, kind of how, the entire season went for certain drivers. For example, and like I said, we're going to talk about the distribution between fast laps and laps led, kind of going back to what you want to see out of a sim product. Notice that I didn't bring up SaberSim because I do believe that SaberSim's product, in terms of a racing simulation, I think it comes a bit short. Okay? I think that's where my projections can make up for it, or knowing how to build for stuff makes up for it. But a lot of the sims that I've seen that are actually good out there are still privately, being used. Okay? That's why Schroeder making his stuff more publicly available is so important, because I think he's one of the better sim tools out there and stuff. But going back to this now, when we look at guys who struggled at the start of the year last year and then how they finished in Cup Series, Zane Smith is one of them. In the Xfinity Series, we have, oh my gosh, he drove the 8 car, Sam Mayer. Couldn't remember his name. Sam Mayer, like, I've been watching, like I said, there's really no DFS content out there, but public opinion is like, oh my God, Sam Mayer's terrible. He's been in this car for how long? He performed terrible last year. Well, he was also wrecked a ton to start the year. Okay, I need to go ahead and freeze this. But Zane Smith was a very, very similar situation where he really didn't do anything. And now, the reason I'm saying this is when we look at a season, when you're going through, whether you're knee deep in the year, whether you're reviewing stuff, as I always say, I just throw together the 1.5 mile tracks together, in addition to Michigan, Dover, Pocono, and stuff, because there's a lot of similarities between these tracks, even if they aren't identical to each other. But as we go throughout the year, especially at the start and in the middle, like the summer, we have drastically different racetracks, okay? So, like, the year starts with 2 back-to-back plate races, right? We get a 1.5. We get a short track. We then get Bristol. We get a goddamn road course. Another short track. Another short track. Texas, which has just become a wreck fest. Another plate race. And then, by this point, we are at the 1.5s, right? For Dover, Kansas, Darlington, Charlotte, everything like that. So really, the, first 2.5 months of a NASCAR season are kind of, at least in a data set of looking at where people are, where things are at, and kind of be thrown away, right? You have Daytona, Atlanta, Talladega, plate race. We're just going to categorize those as orange, right? Yet again, one 1.5 mile racetrack at Las Vegas. Then you go to Texas, okay? Now, yet again, Texas, depending on how crazy that racetrack is, you might want to argue that you're taking that data. You might want to not, especially when we look back at last year of just how many people got wrecked out and what happens at Texas. And because it's early in the year and because teams are taking what they saw or, their first taste of actual on-track speed at Vegas, like Texas is a bit of a question mark. I would argue that Vegas is probably the best way to see where people are going to be entering Dover, Kansas stuff. But we have that, and then we go from Phoenix, Bristol, and Martinsville. We'll categorize these guys as little short tracks. Bristol's a bit of a, certainly a hybrid there. Same thing with Richmond too. So, like, what are we learning from? We don't need that to be green. We'll make that like a random blue. So, like, oh my God, Zane Smith had a terrible season. He wrecked in the Daytona 500, performed poorly. Yet again, this is driver rating, so it's not where these guys finished. And yet again, huge asterisk around driver rating. But man, Zane Smith, what a rough time. Had pretty piss poor runs at the first 2 races of the year. Ran into an issue at Vegas. Comes to Phoenix, to where if you don't have speed, you're going laps down. Oh my gosh, the tire debacle at Bristol. You go to a road course. Okay, what are we learning from here at all, man? First month and a half of a NASCAR season, drastically different tracks can make, like, for example, like Zane Smith was the rookie last year, can make somebody look terrible right off the bat with really no reasoning. So as we go back and like look at where he's scoring, we look back at what he did at the start of this season. And you're like, oh man, Zane Smith is terrible in DFS or whatever. Negative 1.6, negative 16.5, negative 12. Basically scoring nothing until we get to Dover. Okay, but is any of this like relative to where he's actually at? We know the end story of where Spire was. We know the end story of where Zane Smith was. Okay, but at this point in the year, you're thinking, my God, Zane Smith is terrible. He's a terrible DFS play. He's absolutely horrific. At what point kickstarted him from, scoring this poorly to getting a random 76 at Nashville? We're looking at 36. We're looking at 57. We go from literally scoring zeros to start the year to 57, 22, 46, 40, 25, 36. Where was his price tag at for the majority of the year? High 5s, low 6s. That's where Zane Smith was. At what point of the season did people see that? At what point in the season did you see that as a DFS play? Were you aware of this happening? And these are just open-ended questions to keep track of, as we enter this next year. This isn't just necessarily to Zane Smith, it's just what's going on. I would argue that it's the start of the calendar year of what's going on here, okay? We only start running to a groove, around April and May. And we go from, let's go ahead and highlight these guys, which is why, yet again, I categorize all these, these tracks together. The only time we really fall into a groove would be the 2 weekends following COTA, okay? Because, like, hey, man, back-to-back road or back-to-back short tracks, and even then, we can kind of argue that Phoenix is different from Richmond and blah, 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 blah. But for the most part, this is the only 2 section of, like, okay, maybe we have some data here of how these people are performing. But guess what? We're not using this short track data till we get to till we get to Gateway, And then when you're in the month of April, going from Dover, Kansas, Darlington, Coke 600, hey, this data, yet again, it's together, but it's drastically different from what we saw the last month and a half. So, again, using Zane Smith as a bit of a starter here, and yet again, this doesn't even have Atlanta and Daytona because those are plate races and stuff. So we look at that, like, what's going on here, And yet again, Zane Smith, just happened to perform or score poorly at Charlotte, Darlington, Kansas, and pretty much, really didn't do anything until Dover at the start of the year. But this is a guy that, when we got to the end of the year, you were pretty much expecting him to blow out his price tag. Same thing as we go ahead and look at, where guys performed. We'll use, like, Larson, for example, right? And you look at where Larson is and why most sim tools would get him wrong, okay? And SaberSim falls in this category as well. Larson's percentile, his 99th percentile, is not an outcome that's going to happen 1 out of 12 times, 1 out of 8 times, 1 out of 6 times. His ceiling performances, and this is where a lot of sims come short anyway, which is why, yet again, why Romeo does know what he's talking about, why Schroeder and his product is going to be, I wouldn't argue game-changing, but it's a lot more competent than other stuff out there. Larson's performances, he pretty much has 3 outcomes. It's he's wrecking out, he's running into an issue, or he's going to be one of the fastest cars on the track. When you look at it in terms of outputs from a sim or outputs from, projections or whatever, and you start looking at the higher percentile outcomes, it's getting Larson wrong. It's getting Denny Hamlin wrong. It's getting the fastest guys in the series wrong, because unlike other sports, you can't, sim a motorsport like a stick and ball sport, okay? You're going to have the faster guys competing week in and week out, race in and race out, okay? And so, like, you look at Larson's performances, right? Oh, wow, Larson can't, he can't finish plate race or whatever. Still, top 10 performances but yet again, this driver, but still top 10 performances here. Best car at Las Vegas, 7th best at Bristol. What happened at Phoenix? Ran into an issue. Ran into an issue at COTA. Richmond, Martinsville, Texas, Dover, Kansas. I mean, when you look at the outcomes that Larson is having, what does his 99th percentile outcome even mean? Yet again, not finishes. This is just driver rating, but we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 27 of the 36 races. Actually, this isn't including the North Wilkesboro or the Clash. 27 times he had a top 10 driver rating. But what do the sims show? They're like, oh, sim, his projection's like 43.2, DraftKings points, right? So, like, first and foremost, things miss out on, or, most sims are missing out on like that type of stuff. When you look at where Larson is, let's just say, I gave the example out loud of, like, I would argue most of the time his projected DraftKings points were like anywhere between 41 and like maybe 47, when you look at the mean of whatever projection source you're using or whatever the sources they're using and stuff like that. What did he actually end up scoring on this entire year? So let's go ahead and go through here. Let's look there. That's an average of 55.6. Okay. So yet again, you know, and look at how he, and yet again, this isn't even including the plate races and stuff. This is just actual, you know, quantifiable races and stuff. How many times did he score over 50 points last year? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 times out of the races shown on screen, going all the way to Phoenix. I don't believe this is including the road courses and or the plate races. That's a lot of times, okay? Yet again, now let's go ahead and look at laps led, right? Yet again, just looking at those, and yet again, thank you, AD, for having this publicly available, at least at the end of last year. I know you took the link down, but you did have it there, and I'm smart. I pulled it before you took it down. Anyway, like, dude, you look at the amount of laps led that Larson had in these races. It's not even amount of like what is the number. It's about how often is he getting these laps led. This is why Larson, when you're shocked, like when we go into a week and the slate locks and I'm like, oh, dude, Larson's at 31% ownership. Larson's at 38. Larson's at 40. It's still too low. Okay? Yet again, we're talking about the Cup Series here, but this is also explaining and showing why we've seen such an increase in ownership for these smaller series, the Xfinity Series and the Truck Series, whether it be a place differential play, you know, expected to go through the field, whether it's, you know, the favorite for the race, whether it was Eckes or Sanchez or whoever was winning last year, right? Entering these races, these drivers' outcomes are not like anything else in terms of other sports. I gotta get a water really fast. Hold on. Sorry, I've been gone for a second. I'm pretty sure I was saying that, you know, it's not like other sports and stuff of what, you know, is being distributed in like a sim outcome or whatever, right? And yet again, I'm using Larson as like the clear example. But like Larson's 99th percentile outcome, his 95th percentile outcome is not 2% of the laps led, 3% of the laps led, 4% of the laps led in the race. His, you know, regular like 70 percentile outcome is like 8% of the laps led and stuff. Now, yet again, now you might be, or I might be sounding contradicting at the moment because I think that's where SaberSim falls short on their NASCAR package of where their sims are at, okay, because they are phenomenal at football, NHL, baseball. That's where their things are made off of. I still fully believe that they just move that and try to apply it to NASCAR and didn't build their sims tool up from the ground up. But using my stuff, at least because that's how I use my stuff, I think I can make up for that in their sim stuff. And then, I also still just hand build for NASCAR in general. But if you're running, say if there's a product out there, which I can't even think of one at the moment, I'm just saying out loud in general, they need to be aware of this going on. And when I've talked to other people or seen other things, and when something is clearly not doing this correctly, that's when I'm like, okay, that's a bad product and stuff, you know, or whatever the case may be. Anyway, one thing to note that we saw last year was the distribution of fast laps, which was, you know, as we go back throughout the years, we see fast laps and laps led being pretty heavily correlated. If you were leading, you had a high likelihood of also getting the fast lap. It used to be very close, like 2-1. 2 laps led equals 1 fast lap, at least somewhere along that line. I would argue, and we can kind of look through here, that when we look at these races and we're seeing laps led spread out throughout the field, okay, even in races that have a shitload of laps, whether it's Bristol, whether it's Martinsville, or it's races that have 267, whether it's Texas, Darlington, Kansas, okay, we're seeing laps led be pretty much spread out. Even before we get to situations of different strategies, before people get on different sequences, somebody blows a tire early, it has to pit, get off sequence, they start running a lot of fast laps down. We are seeing laps led and the distribution of those laps led be way more spread out than in previous years, okay? I mean, look on your screen. This is all the fast laps given out in each of these races, okay? Some people are aware of that. Some people aren't. You know, you look at a place like Miami, you know, like there's not even a real favorite here. Yeah, sure, you had Reddick, who was the fastest car. You had Chase Elliott, 29, but like really no favorite. These used to be races to where you would have the fastest guy have the fastest laps. You look at Christopher Bell at Las Vegas. What changed in that sense? Who was a guy projected to run very quickly in this race who ran into an issue? Tyler Reddick. We go the next week. He wins at Miami. And even still, 19 laps before you flip over at Las Vegas, that's pretty good. You look at Michigan. Should have Michigan on here. Very spread out, still, Reddick. Hey, probably should have been playing Reddick at the end of the year, right? Like, we're seeing, anyway. But still, it's spread out. Reddick, Truex, you know, Ty Gibbs, you know, Busher, Bubba Wallace. Sure, we see Toyota's carrying that, but still, it's still spread out amongst the drivers and stuff. So when we're looking at projections, and we're looking at where people are, whether it's people, sims, whatever the case may be, if you are not, for the majority of drivers, projecting each driver to get anywhere from like 2 to 7 fast laps, you're behind. You've been behind this last year. You've been behind these previous years. I mean, this situations where, I mean, we'll just count 1.5s, because that I know for a fact when I look at the 1 point. I think it's still up in the air for short tracks. I mean, yes, the data will correlate, but you can usually see it a lot more at 1.5s. But you look at guys who are, let's say, over 10 fast laps in these races, yet again, whether it's getting off sequence, whatever the case may be. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 at Las Vegas. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 at Texas. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 at Dover. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 at Kansas. Darlington. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 at Darlington. Like, this is not how years used to be, or this is not how years past used to be, of where, like, hey, we're getting like over 7 guys in each 1.5 mile race, and yet again, we haven't even gone through the rest of the field or rest of the season yet. We're getting a lot of people leading like 10 laps or 10 fast laps going to people. Same thing with laps led. Now, laps led, you know, we can argue that maybe 10 laps isn't significant for laps led, because if you're a leader, you're just expected to lead more laps. But like fast laps is really, really telling that there's speed throughout the field, and it's not necessarily a leader. And if that's not being calculated into projections, you know, stuff's going wrong. And, you know, as I was going through this stuff, yet again, you know, this kind of started off of like what the schedule looks like when it starts, why some people might get off to a slow start, or people who haven't been played, you know, are suddenly getting played, and or we can look at the Rick Ware cheat code. So we had the people who ran the Rick Ware cars last year. Give me a moment here. Let me get the 15. I need the 15 and the 51 machine. So let's look at Haley. Haley took over the 7 car late in the year. Let that load. Where are we at? Took it over at Kansas. So we look at Justin Haley's start to the year, right? This is where the Rick Ware car, you know, and yet again, Cody Ware, we'll look at him as well. But look at where Justin Haley is at in these races, okay? Yet again, driver rating, you know, pretty poor representation of where people are when it gets to the back of the field. But up until Kansas too, so that's right here, you know, look at what Haley was able to do in this Rick Ware car. We combine that and we go ahead and look at where Haley was at with DraftKings points, and you see the Rick Ware cheat code. You know, you got to remember Haley was low 5s, high 6s, if not 5s for, you know, a good portion of the time. Yet again, we'll look at Corey LaJoie and stuff as well. Or not Corey LaJoie, or I mean, I guess we can, but we'll look at Cody Ware. But like, look at these points, man. For the most time, when you're in the 5K, anything over 26 is pretty damn shocking, right? But this is a situation where, like, several times, not just, yet again, we're not even talking about plate races. 23, 27, 43, 13, 9, 26, 32, 42, 54, 47, 36, 51, 32, 38, 34. We're still not Kansas yet. I mean, this is really, really significant. You know, you look at Cody Ware, who, did we not add Cody Ware? What are we doing? AD. What are we doing? Unless he kept Kazgarala for all of these. Maybe, can't confirm. AD question mark. What are we doing here? Go ahead and look over here of where Cody was at in driver rating. And we combine that with where he finished in these races, which we'll just go ahead and bring this. I'll put a race and reference really fast to show this type of stuff. You know, you look at what the 15 did last year, you know, and people are like, oh, I don't want to play Cody Ware. Oh, I don't want to play these slow cars. Oh, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. Like, look where Kazgrala, where Riley Herbst, where Cody Ware was able to bring this hunk of shit car to. Like, I mean, yet again, when the tires hit the fan, you know, Kazgrala and Justin Haley, whether they were good on tire wear because they were so slow, because they know what they're doing. Like 19th when stuff's hitting the fan at Bristol is pretty crazy. 26th at Martinsville, 27th at Texas, the Wreckfest of Texas, 29th at Dover, 18th at Darlington. But you look at, and you have a lot of like mid-20s and low 30 finishes between this car. You know, you look specifically at what Cody Ware was able to do in it. And we can load here. We can load here. Anyway, we look at, I mean, you know, stay green. Nobody wrecked at Gateway. And yet again, Cody Ware, why you want to play him a lot at the plate races. But still, Pocono, everybody dies, able to avoid it. Indianapolis, like this 18 is like actually Pocono and like Indy, crazy competitive. Okay, yet again at the bottom, this is we look at Pocono yet again. Everybody died here. You know, when Corey LaJoie wrecked everyone, able to pass it. You know, started dead last, practically finished 26 at his price tag. Like, come on, folks, that's what we wanted in some DFS plays. Yet again, we have a Wreckfest here. And where is Cody Ware able to come out? Yet again, starting last, finishing 18th, like needs to be in your player pool or drivers similar to that. Now, yet again, I'm not going to get into the Rick Ware, where these charters are at. Yet again, just one full-time driver right now, most likely going to be Cody Ware, but like probably a guy that you want to play. Which yet again, driver rating is not going to, you know, display that, but as well. But like, these are things we got to know. Things we should note when we're looking back at these seasons and these races and stuff. Anyway, now we've kind of talked about that, and I've given examples of like where Larson was or where Zane Smith was. Let's just kind of go over where everybody was last year in terms of DraftKings points. So yet again, I believe the average is. I may have made one at the end of the year, but we're going to go ahead and just. Actually, we're going to do it on. I'm going to do it on this one here, man. Pretty sure it's already sorted by something. Could be down. I forgot how I sorted this. Either way. Let's see. My bad. Equals. Hold on a minute. Dude, it's been so long I forgot how to freaking get stuff working in my freaking sheets, dude. It took me like 30 seconds to figure out what the hell I'm doing here. Which, let me make sure that's what we're sorting by. What are we sorting by over here, dude? I forgot what this race was I forgot what the sheet was sorted by. But anyway, you know, when you look at the DraftKings points last year on the average and we look at where people were at, I mean, we look at Larson and kind of, before I even made the point, I guess I should have just done this to begin with, right? But you look at where people are being scored and what their average DraftKings points are, like this is where people fell in line at, These were people week in and week out that you probably wanted to have some form or fashion into it. Also, another reason why I don't necessarily like projections sorted by mean, because or at least made with a mean or whatever, because sometimes you're going to miss on where people can be when they can possibly be. And yet again, projections, can only come in once we have a starting grid or whatever. But, you look at how bad somebody was, like LaJoy was statistically let me get this on the screen. Statistically at these tracks on your screen, the worst DraftKings scorer last year. Next to Harrison Burton, Zane Smith, until he showed up in the second half of the year. Kaz Grala, Ricky Stenhouse, Austin Cindric. John Nemechek McDowell was a driver that was pretty much just absolutely abysmal last year, which is like, unexcusable, for somebody in that type of equipment. That's why I just no wonder I could never get McDowell right, or I would just always be underweight on McDowell, and no matter what I did, just because I know for a fact I just never played McDowell last year. But doing this throughout the year, and even, reviewing a year of seeing hey man, Kyle Busch was pretty bad, for the most part outside of 1.5s, because I know he even started fast at Vegas till he got that speeding penalty. Oh, this is the I guess AD did just keep the 15 with Kaz Grala combined. Rick Ware's stuff into it, or Cody Ware's stuff into it. Anyway, I mean, this isn't super, super deep stuff anyway. This is just looking at where everybody's scoring on, the season and stuff. But you look at the amount of, okay, so the last thing I wanted to say in this regard before we get again go ahead and look at laps led and fast laps and stuff is look at the amount of volatility in NASCAR DFS. Yet again, we're sorted by average DraftKings points, okay? That can, the caveats on that is, were they given that based on where they started? Did they dominate a race? Did they get fast laps and laps led? We know, a variety of answers to those questions are available for any driver, okay? But you look at basically DNFs, which we would consider DNF as scoring 0 or scoring negative. That's going to be very difficult to do that if you're even still running. And you look at where the amount of people are at. I don't believe we have. I need to go ahead and do that. That is one thing I wanted to add with how many DNFs we had here. But you even look at Larson. Yet again, his outcomes were either scoring 80 points or literally doing nothing. Larson 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to argue 4 DNFs or 4 negative, 4 absolute red situations. 1, 2, 3 for Hamlin. You look at Bell 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 for Bell. And you look at the amount of green and red on your screen here. I mean, this is the most volatile sport out there. This is the most anything can happen at any one point that can take good drivers out, that can take bad drivers out, that can make drivers who you wouldn't think are necessarily great, are really good. Let's look at the car number. Preece, top 15 scorer, basically, on the year. You look at Bubba Wallace, you look at Bowman, you look at Gregson, kind of middle of the road. But then you look at people who I know for a fact, starting in the back a lot last year, whether it's because they were slow on cue, whether they were slow, in practice. But you have Haley, Gillen, Briscoe, Hocevar, Eric Jones, and same thing with well, maybe not same thing with Nemechek because he's down here too. But NASCAR DFS is a volatile sport. Kind of going back, I know we kind of skipped through these, but this is where we're at in terms of the races. This is the amount of races that had a lap led in it. You look at Larson leading that. In 19 of these races on here, he led a lap. Yet again, we're not looking at road courses. We're not looking at plate races. This is where he's falling in line at. A lot of people leading laps. You know, this is not the NASCAR DFS of, 2018, 2019, 2020. You know, with this next gen car and where these teams are at and what NASCAR has been doing with the less practice and all the things that they're doing, we're seeing laps led and fast laps be spread out tremendously between people. And then again, that's why I wanted to talk about the distribution of fast laps and laps led. And this we'll go in and talk more detail about how each drivers did at specific races. But this is just kind of what I wanted to open, the 2025 season with talking about everything I did in the beginning. Showing, to right off the bat of how spread out, everything is in NASCAR DFS between fast laps and laps led. So thanks for watching. We have tons of videos to continue. So I will see you again shortly, and best of luck. Enjoy the rest of your day or whatever you're doing right now. Thank you.